At this point, there is no way to deny that professional golf is facing a reckoning. The Waste Management Phoenix Open was down 35% in viewership versus the year before. The Arnold Palmer Invitational, which is a signature event, was down 30% in viewership versus the prior year. And the Players, for its electric finish and everything that we saw happen there, Mike, it was down 15% from the year before. We've seen these every day. It seems like new numbers come in, just showing how much casual viewers, something that we've kind of talked about and warned here on the podcast, would be turning away from the game, very much appear to be doing so. And here's the thing. It's not just like the answer is that viewers are now switching away from the PGA Tour and towards LIV. This is a problem across the board for professional golf. The Associated Press just reported this, and this is kind of really sheds light on the fact that it's not simply a switch from one league to the other. They said, it's not like all those lost viewers have simply switched the channel to LIV. The upstart circuit, which so far has failed to land a major TV deal, leaving it far down the dial on the CW, barely registers in ratings with viewership numbers generally in the low hundreds of thousands. So this is what we feared. We feared the idea that casual viewers are going to be put off by what has happened over the past year or two. And can golf be really saved at this point? So we're going to talk about whether it can or not.
Okay.
Where do we lead from here?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
Right. What's concerning for me, I guess, is the ratings for the Masters weren't hot either. Right. I think they were down 20.
Also down 20%.
So I think that was an event where both tours came together. You would think ratings were equal or better or just a little off, but 20%. I mean, come on.
Right.
That tells me there's a problem.
And I think what the bigger indication of that was the Masters is, and one, I think it's almost a red herring in a way, and we're going to kind of dissect this. But where people are saying that the solution is that we've got to get the best players in the world back together, playing together. Well, arguably, you could say that the Masters was our first opportunity to do that, where we had, 13 players from LIV come over, and we started to see the big names playing together again. But there, as you said, we also saw ratings drop. So, golf.com, I pulled up an article. They looked into this. They said the similar type of thing. They said, the bigger issue is that golf's ratings are now down across the board, even in events when the best players come together. The issue isn't as simple as the PGA Tour dealing with bad weather, and the solution isn't as simple as reuniting the game's best players more often. Pro golf seems to have lost more of its viewership base, and that is bad news.
Let me ask you this, though. Is it possible that they have a scheduling issue? Like, are we busier as people on weekend? Like, are just people not being able to tune in with what's happening in life? Or no, like, prove me wrong there. I don't know. Has life always been the same for year after year, past decades? I don't know.
There is definitely some truth sitting in that, because
you and I can't watch golf on the weekends with everything we've got going.
Well, what we've seen is, and I don't feel like my viewership has changed too much. I will still put it on Sunday on the television. I will, however, say that the other rounds, Thursday through Saturday, I am migrating more towards streaming.
Yep.
Now, do I believe that 20% dip that we saw in the Masters viewership, that 20% of the people moved over to the app and just weren't accounted for there? I don't think it was that significant. I think a lot of people, and you guys let us know, what's your viewership kind of tendencies? Let us know in the comments of how you do it. But for me, the app is a fantastic way for me to stay in touch when I'm away from my television for briefer periods of time. I am not opening up my iPhone and sitting and watching, the Masters for hours there.
Right.
I'll pop it open when I have to run outside and walk the dog for a few minutes. When I'm at my kid's ball game and I want to, kind of keep up to date with what's going on. But that's not the same viewership as sitting there in front of it. For me at least, and again, I don't characterize myself as a casual viewer.
Yeah,
I'm a much more invested viewer. For me, every opportunity I get, I sit down in front of a television and put it on there.
Right. And like you said, and you're not like, if you want to find out how Scotty's doing at the RBC Heritage, you're not at a softball game. You're not flipping that thing into landscape mode and putting on live TV and watching it. You're probably just checking the leaderboard. right?
Yes, and that
Or-
in that way, that viewership hasn't really changed for me.
Yes.
I will when I'm tied up, I'm casually checking in.
Yes.
But
you're
then
not watching.
when I get home, I'm putting it on.
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday, I'm watching. The
Yeah,
thing.
Sunday primarily is your day.
If I'm home.
If you're home.
Yeah. Again, my viewership hasn't changed. I'll watch the Saturday and Sunday rounds as often as I could possibly have.
And right now, I don't think where we are in the season is even conflicting with anything major in other sports. There's no
Right. So getting back to
World
like the point
Series
that you brought up, which I think is true, is that we are witnessing, and the reports are showing that there's been a decline in viewership of live sporting events across the board.
okay.
Okay. So but it's not enough to account for how much and how drastic we've seen in the game of golf. These numbers of 20, 30% being downturned is much more indicative to me of a bigger underlying problem that needs to be solved. And one thing that I want to dive into and really kind of wonder is Scotty Scheffler the person who's going to turn this around? Because undoubtedly, any sport, and golf has been evidence of this with Tiger Woods and others in the past, Jack Nicklaus, things like that. A star really needs to emerge in a lot of ways.
Sure.
In order for you to get the real attachment of fans and the real driving. At the end of the day,
no doubt. 2 years
sports
ago,
is
Scotty
driven by
Scheffler-
our stars.
Absolutely. No one knew who Scotty Scheffler was about 2 to 3 years ago. Well, not a lot of people.
And my question is this: if sports is driven by stars, is Scotty, with his incredible play, the person to do it? But even more so this: if we're going to put the weight on Scotty's back of being our hero, can he really be a hero without a villain? And just generally, like, it's just an existential question. Can a hero exist without a villain? And I want to break that apart in a few minutes. I want to talk about it because you could arguably make the case that the villains have left the building.
Sure.
Easily. By going to live and moving over there, and think about the names, who, and I'm not calling these people villain in real lives,
these
but
are
I'm saying the
people who
role
speak
that
their
they
mind
play
and stir the pot,
and who have in the past have been the counterpoints to some of the more squeaky clean
Poster
hero
childs
roles,
of the
right?
PGA Tour.
So Bryson DeChambeau, Bubba Watson, and you could arguably put him in that
100%.
way. Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka.
Yeah.
These are the guys who were the villains that we loved.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And in that
You
way.
need it.
But the animosity between the two still retains. And this is evidence that the players are very aware of the ratings issue. So we're wondering what some of the players had to say about it. One, case in point, Ian Poulter, who you could also kind of classify under one of those guys, villains we love
Spoke
to
his
hate.
mind, yep.
And we're saying that from our side because he was always the villain, in the Ryder Cups and the U.S. team.
Sure,
he,
no
he
doubt.
did a lot of damage to our U.S. teams.
Yep.
And he was the villain there, but it made for fantastic television, right, to have that.
No doubt.
So, obviously he shares a nickname with JT Poston, the Postman. Ian Poulter because the Postman delivers. Okay. So in the early rounds of the RBC this week, you had JT Poston was in the lead.
Yep.
And a fan had put the question to Ian Poulter saying, there's only one Postman, right? To Ian Poulter. And Poulter responded saying, if it helps their ratings, they can borrow it for now. So taking a very, opportunist spot there to take a shot at the ratings.
Do you think live guys are rooting that the ratings go down in a way? Validates their decision and all that, or
It's
it's
tough
probably
to
hard
say, because I think anyone in their right mind, if you are in the world of professional golf, to root against viewership in general is a bad idea. I think what they should all want is that there's viewership across the board on both sides, especially if they're really going to come together. But the reality is, and why I kind of prefaced by saying those quotes earlier, is that it would be more of a bragging point for the guys on live to say, like, haha, everyone's leaving PGA Tour to come watch us.
Right.
The reality is they're just not watching.
not.
They're not watching either tour.
Right.
And these are the real casual viewers.
Of course. And to your point before about can there be a hero without a villain? I mean, there's a lot of guys on tour that are just like the Seinfeld line, like she's too good. You know, they're too good.
Yeah.
They're too nice. They're too polite. They're too great of people.
Well,
and I think you need a little bit of sprinkle. I mean, think about the housewives on Bravo. If they just hugged and they were friends, no one would watch the show. They need the fighting and the yelling. I mean, that's what brings you back. I'm not saying we need guys on tour fighting and yelling, but I'll be honest, when Brooks and Bryson were bickering on tour, it was great TV. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was something different. It's like WrestleMania. Why do you think that thing has lasted so long?
Right.
So,
and the reality is every week it seems like it's yet another feel-good story with Scotty Scheffler. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic, and I'm enjoying watching and rooting him on. He's a great guy. He's an incredible how his dominance right now.
Incredible, unstoppable.
But like I said, can you ever achieve that true hero status without a villain, without something on the other side of that? So what are some of these other players saying, right? And now players are becoming more and more aware of it, and they're becoming aware of it because they're being asked the questions by reporters. Reporters are putting these ratings in their face and saying, it's dropping. What do you think? So recently, Peter Malnati, who also sits on the player advisory board, so he's an important voice there, he said, people are just sick of the narrative in golf about being about, contracts on live, purses on the tour. They want to see sport. They want to see people who are the best in the world at what they do it at a high level, and celebrate that. Celebrate the athleticism, celebrate the achievement. So he's saying that people are sick of it. We don't want to hear this anymore. And it's not something that all the blame can just be placed on the live side either with the purses, because the PGA Tour has responded in kind by raising its purses, and not just raising their purses, but shouting it from the rooftops. Yeah. They're not quietly doing it.
Right. No.
Right. And again, I've said this countless episodes now on the podcast, because I continue to try to raise the alarm of this is where we're going, and this is the trouble that we're seeing, is you can't have these two things going in opposite directions. You can't have viewership and ratings going down and purses going up, and those purses being contingent upon sponsors. So now we're seeing sponsors dropping out of events. It would be a different story if you said to the sponsor, hey, I want you to be a sponsor of a signature event. Yep. You're going to get the most out of it. We're going to have this great field, and the ratings are going to be through the roof. But then you look at like the API. Now, as a sponsor, I've paid upwards of
there you go.
30% more this year to have 30% less viewership. Business standpoint, we're going in the opposite direction.
That doesn't work. So you think that their scramble right now to get these outside funds, these investors, is to avoid the snowball effect, that if you start losing ratings, you start losing sponsors, then all of a sudden you're down to 4 signature events. Right. Now everyone on tour is like,
What makes me worry that these reaching out for this funding, whether it comes from Strategic Sports Group, the PIF, whatever, instead of becoming a sound, kind of investment, at one point, does it become a bailout? Because now we can no longer make the case for sponsors to have these big purses.
Right.
The players continue to get richer as casual viewers drop out more and more. Yeah. That's the concern that I have. So Max Homa, another guy, who he'll give it to you straight. Yeah, right. And they asked him the question of whether fans should feel fatigued by the narrative that's been golf over the last couple of years. Yeah. And he said, they probably should have fatigue. I don't know why they'd want to care about how much money we're making and how much more money we want to make. It's quite nauseating. I mean, you can't be more direct than that.
Yeah, you can't.
And in a lot of ways, that's what I'm saying is that the players are starting to see it and feel it. And the people who we're never going to hear from, because they'll just quietly drop off, are those casual viewers. Yeah. And like I said, as we start to look towards this big picture of, what's happening week in and week out with the PGA Tour, the confusion around schedules and who's playing where, it's just painting a bleak picture.
Do you think you can live with events being eliminated? Like, do you need golf week in and week out? Do you need the Zurich next week? Do you need as a fan?
So what you're, I mean, basically saying is like
they had to
if something
lose.
was more scarce, would I be more ready to tune in when it's there?
Yep.
I don't know.
A little absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? I don't know, but I don't think it works.
I
in
don't think
sports.
so. I just don't. I think when you come to, again, I don't want to address this from the standpoint of me as a viewership case.
Right,
Because I'm not this important demographic that golf is losing, which is the casual viewer. I think for the casual viewer, more at bats is actually better. I think more weeks where there's fireworks and there's the best players playing together and there's storylines to be driven, that's when you start to see something.
I mean, one of my theories, just looking at the last 4 years from COVID, I think the boom of social media, like, think about it. Like, you can wake up on a Monday, open up Instagram, open up TikTok, maybe even open up, YouTube. You could find out who won. You could find out how they won in 3 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. You know, I just think, like, if we're consuming some of our golf that way, that's definitely going to hurt ratings. Like, I don't have to tune into the RBC, but I know this morning, I'll know who won, who came in second, what the player story was like. I get it.
But I don't know. To me, I don't feel like the accessibility of highlights is what was hurting here. Because think about it. You could go back 100 years ago. I could pick up the newspaper and read whether the Yankees won last night. That's not going to tell me whether I tune in or not. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
If anything, like I'm getting information. It's not the entertainment of actually watching the product.
For me, more so, it's how we've been consuming it and just how you get those video highlights, not a newspaper. But yeah, you're right.
But no matter what, you'll always be a separate of highlights and versus watching.
Sure.
But again, why do people tune in? A lot of people tune in to see a star. And if you think about this is across sports. There are, in the NFL, there are probably 20 to 30 active names that drive a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Right? You think about even the best teams, like Kansas City winning.
Yeah.
Think about the number of people who are tuning in to watch Mahomes or Kelsey play, right? So does golf then have a star problem? And this is something that I just was reading the other day. Golf.com brought this up, and it was a fantastic point. They said Rory McIlroy hasn't won on the PGA Tour in 10 months. Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, and Patrick Cantlay haven't won in 2 years. The rest of golf stars, they went on to say, Bryson, Rahm, Brooks, are spending most of the year playing on LIV, a tour that in recent weeks has struggled to clip 200,000 average viewers on the CW per Nielsen. That, for the non-ratings inclined, is less than a third of the audience averaged by the WNBA last season on ABC.
Oh.
So you remove a guy like Rahm who was winning, right? There goes a star, goes over to LIV for whatever reasons. I mean, we've done countless episodes just on this, but the fact is, LIV is still fighting an uphill battle to get people watching, as evidenced by that. And I get it. Depending on where you're listening to this show or watching this show, there's more viewership opportunities in Europe. There's streaming. There's ways you can get it, so you can make that argument. But let's stick to the problem that needs to be solved. And the reality is, like I said, the casual viewer. I don't believe that the casual viewer are the ones who are downloading the LIV app and sitting there and watching it like that.
Right.
I'm talking about the people we need to continue to drive the general popularity of the sport, which is somebody who will flip on their television and they have a couple other sporting events to choose from and they choose this. Right?
They're choosing it because of a star. I think you nailed it.
I think in a large part, they're that star driven.
You had Scheffler going Wyndham Clark. You had Abe again, who was hot at the Masters. I saw those names on the leaderboard. Like, all right, I'm staying around. You don't see those names, and you see 7 names you never heard of. You might be moving on to sporting event number 2.
Right, and that's what a lot of people said. Some of the non-household names that had won early on tour. So, what I'm driving at here, and what we're kind of looking at, is in order for a star to emerge, and substitute in that word hero, I think there are a couple components that are missing. I think the one component that's missing is the fact that we need a level kind of regularly occurring battlefield for our hero to emerge from. And I don't think that 4 at-bats which is the 4 majors, which are right now the only time that the best players in the world all come together, is enough to have someone rise to that stardom that we're talking about, right? Because I think what we need is to start with a baseline of finding a way that you can get the players on a regular basis coming together more often. Now, there are countless theories floating out there about what this is going to be, but we're all in the dark still with the agreement. Some people are saying that if the tours come together, then the best players on LIV will be able to come over and play in the signature events. Whatever it may be, you got to get more than 4 occurrences per year where people are the best players in the world are all playing. Yeah. Right?
Definitely.
That's step 1. Then I think step 2 is you have to get back to a natural, it's a tale as old as time. What makes a good story is a hero and a villain, right? And who's a hero and who's the villain may vary depending on the viewer.
Exactly.
Somebody might be my hero and your villain, or vice versa.
Phil versus Tiger all those years.
Right. But having top level players battling it out head to head and having a little bit of that diversity of who, what the personalities are. Scottie Scheffler is an amazing golfer, and he's just a great, from everything I can derive from, a great, kind soul.
Yeah.
Right. But his interviews aren't exactly electric.
Right.
You can tell and I understand it. I respect that, and I'll give him that. The last place he wanted to be after he won the Masters was there giving interviews, and he said that.
Yeah.
I just want to get home to my wife.
Right.
My wife's pregnant. I want to get home and see her.
Right.
Right. It's a feel-good story. It's not the best television necessarily.
Right. Totally.
Right. If you saw an interview like that ahead of a title fight, be like, yeah, I'm looking forward to fighting him, but like I got to get home. Whatever.
Yeah,
it's not. So what I'm saying is, as we get these guys back together and playing more, bring the villains back.
Yeah, totally.
Because in the reality is, what would you say is the closest thing we have to a villain right now? And by that I mean, who's even garners enough of an emotional response from viewers in one way or the other on the PGA Tour to even make you care enough to root against him?
I think right now, Zach Johnson. Sorry,
Zach took it.
But
yeah,
I mean,
he took it pretty hard.
You've been taking it hard lately.
But he's also not playing on the PGA Tour week in and week out.
I think if you had to label some of that, I think people are starting to dig more under the hood of JT and seeing like a little bit of love him, want to support him, hope he wins again, hate that he's struggling, versus the other side of the coin saying like, kind of glad he's been a little bit of arrogance.
And if anything, that might be a little bit of a fallout from the Netflix Full Swing documentary, where he was kind of put on that same side as Zach Johnson.
Yeah.
People were frustrated. That could
be it.
But that was the closest we thought. Beyond that, maybe a Patrick Cantlay. I think about Hatgate. But again, none of these are at the level of where we saw Brooks and Bryson, the way that, the way that was kind of unfolding, or any of that type of stuff. Or Bubba Watson was always a big love him or hate him personality.
Yes.
I don't think that the tour really has the love him or hate hims right now. There's just the, that's good for him. You know what I mean? Type of, and great golf and whatever it may be. But again, I think that the only way to kind of solve this is to start to get these guys back together on a regular basis, where the natural storylines will emerge of the personality driven this or that.
Yeah. I'm thinking, what about a golf bad boy? Rick Vaughn from a major league, like a bad boy. You know what I mean? Like, do you think
personalities always drew dry? You know what I mean? But like I said,
it's just a rebel. Like Kisner always felt like that a little bit, but he was like the nice, clean rebel.
Regardless, what I'm saying is, in order to elevate those stars to that hero level, there's got to be a counterpoint to it. And I find that I'm watching the PGA Tour week in and week out. I'm enjoying what I'm watching. I'm watching some great golf. Yeah. And at this point, I'm just kind of entertained by and rooting on good golf. Right? I just don't know if that's enough for the casual viewer. Yeah, and I think it drives back to this idea that the only way to really solve this is to get everybody back together. Yeah. Right? On a more regular basis. I also think that there's one other thing that was a continued kind of black eye that's been hurting the attention. And I think that the Masters kind of really shed a big light on that. And it's a topic that was hot and then kind of quieted, but there's a lot left unresolved with that. So I want to talk about that in a second. Let's pause there and do a quick word from our sponsors.
All right, guys, the all-new FootJoy Pro SLX shoes are here. They're great. I mean, these shoes are engineered with the PowerTrax system, transforming golf footwear with their innovative 3D X-Wing, which effectively redistributes energy during your swing for that enhanced stability. The racetrack outsole features this radial disc traction and it extends into the ground. I mean, these guys are smart. They thought of everything. They try to optimize your overall traction, which addresses varied on-course conditions and your walking needs, because we're playing in all kinds of conditions out there. Mud, slop, dry, hard ground. So these guys have thought of it all. And you might have saw these shoes recently. I don't know if you saw the commercial with Max Homey flushes when he starts flying. He's like, wee! Yeah. The shoes with the X underneath. They're really, really sleek. You guys got to check them out for yourself. Just go to footjoy.com. Check out the whole Pro SLX selection. There's a lot of cool colors. You guys are going to love them.
And listen, make this the year that you commit to getting out there and getting a great fitting. We've had the opportunity recently to go through a fitting for the new Titleist T-Series irons, as well as the new SM10 Vokey wedges. And I've said this before, for as many fittings as we've gone through, I learn something new every time. And there's never a time that I feel more confident with the club that's in my hand than when I know that it's been properly fit and I've gone through that fitting. Not only in a fitting do you get the education, as a great fitter will take you through the hows and whys and whens of hitting each individual club, but you'll also learn a little bit more about why that club is best fit for you. And the cool thing that I've learned is that just knowing that across the spectrum, there's no one thing that's right for anyone. You know what I mean? And it just really is, it's fitting it directly to the player. So again, whether it be the turf interaction that we experience with the SM10 wedges, or the ball speed and the variation of distance and dispersion and angle of descent that I was able to get from putting those T-Series irons in my bags, no matter what it is, there's always going to be an area where you can really start to match up your own performance with the great performance of the clubs. And there's no better way to get that than with a fitting. So go to Titleist.com, find out more about where you can schedule your fitting. And like I said, if you do one gift to yourself as a golfer this year, it's gift yourself the experience of a proper fitting. And once you do, you will just realize the value of the fitting, and I guarantee you'll never go back, because we never have. So go to Titleist.com, find out about all the fitting options, and go get fit this year. There was one other thing that and it just kind of screamed at me as I was watching the Masters this year. And I'm trying my hardest to kind of put myself in the shoes of the casual viewer. I try to remove myself from being like where we're at now. Like, we have a golf podcast, we're watching week in and week out, all that type of stuff. We're not the audience that we're generally trying to attract. Like, we're the guys who are going to watch it anyway. What would put off the casual viewer? And this hit hard earlier this year, and then it kind of lost the attention, of the news cycle. But I guarantee as we get closer to the actual date, it's only going to ramp up again. And that was the golf ball rollback. Yeah, I think the rollback put a much more sour taste in the mouths of the casual viewer than I think a lot of golf's governing bodies want to admit. And I think that they try to kind of smooth it over or walk past it by saying, oh, it won't matter that much to your everyday golfers, and pros are going to lose 10, 15 yards off their drives, whatever it may be. And it's going to make the game more, entertaining in the long run. But then I look at the Masters. And I say, is this further evidence that the rollback was a solution, looking for a problem, so to speak? I think we had, when you looked at the final leaderboard, was there 6 guys under par?
Yeah, it wasn't many.
Yeah, there was a handful. It was the very top of the leaderboard that were under par. The cut line, I think, was +5. It was proof to me that the golf ball where it's at is not a problem. Nobody went in there and overpowered Augusta. Right. And I full well get it. They lengthened some of the tees and things like that. Okay. But it wasn't a circus. They didn't run away with it, right? Yeah. We saw them struggle. We saw that course humble the best golfers in the world. We saw quadruple bogeys. Yeah, sure did. And I get it. There was some weather. Okay. It was windy. Yep. That's going to happen. Sure. Yep. Right? But again, I think from an entertainment standpoint, if we're trying to make an entertaining product and kind of looking at this whole thing as a big picture, if we're splitting up our fields so we have guys playing in different places, if we're ripping apart the heroes and the villains so they're no longer playing side by side, if we're taking the excitement of the long ball, or at least in the view of the casual who maybe doesn't even fully understand what the rollback change is,
Right.
if that's becoming golf's elevator pitch, well then guess what? There's no surprise that more casual golfers are going to see this as a less entertaining product and tune out.
You think that's enough to drop the viewership now? Because if so, what's going to happen when they do roll it back? Jeez.
That's my worry. Is what? But
So
I think when that was the wrong time and the wrong place for them to come in and announce that rollback when golf was already struggling with the optics of the fragmentation of the sport, to come in and kill the party.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? It's like literally mom and dad coming home and saying, "All right, guys, everybody's got party's over," right? Yeah. In an already waning party in that way. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was evidence. I thought the Masters was pure evidence that we don't need a rollback. I would have no problem with if they said that they wanted to freeze the ball where it is and not allow any further distance advancements. You know,
okay.
We're going to forever conform here, freeze it, whatever. I think like I said, I think the it's a PR nightmare to try to go out there and tell the general public, the general viewership, that the ball is no longer going to go as far. Because I'm telling you right now, that's what most people are hearing. They're not hearing it's only a 5% change. It's going to matter more for the guys who hit it further because it's kind of like a sliding scale on the way that ball speed works.
Right.
They're not hearing that.
No.
Your casual golfers are like, oh, you know, the guy's not going to hit it. I liked watching because I like those guys, watching those guys bomb it. I can't bomb it. I like to watch them do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, maybe this is me just kind of feeling like it's one more thing piling on, but I truly do feel like that was one more thing that hit hard this year.
Yep.
And I think a lot of your everyday, your guys who are going to like just watch something on Sunday might be like, let me just watch a different sport. Because that's.
I mean, I could see that. I mean, I tie that in with the fact that golf PGA Tour was a very, I think, baby boomer type sport. I think like now these kids are getting more. The baby boomers are becoming more extinct. I should say they're getting older. They're dying off. Maybe they're just losing viewership that way. The rollback, it's another thing. It's an eyesore on the sport. It's putting people off. I think all that combined.
But think about it. We hit such a tremendous growth phase right before all this went down.
COVID?
No, before everything happened with, what do you call it? COVID hurt all sports.
Right.
You know, as far as viewership. Golf grew during COVID and generally. But we're talking professional golf.
But the split of golf.
Right? I'm saying the split of golf and the rollback and all these things, golf will look back, I think, in the history books and say, man, we couldn't have had a worse timing on this.
Yeah.
Because those happened when we were bringing more youth into the sport, more youth attention. Right. People were watching these incredible storylines of you know, week in and week out, these great golfers, some of the best golfers the sport has ever seen, dueling it out. And golf was starting to like really launch. And then all of a sudden, in a way, it's hard to not call these self-inflicted wounds because golf comes in and splits itself in half with LIV branching off as its own tour.
Right.
And then the golf's governing bodies come in and kind of put the hammer down even harder by saying, we're going to, you know, roll back the golf ball and we're going to slow down the equipment and make the game not as, you know, entertaining of a product in that way.
Yeah.
So again, I just thought, I have my own personal gripes with the idea of the rollback, but I couldn't help but in a way, you know, yelling at my TV screen a little bit of saying like, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Augusta National, it was a perfect proof that the best of the best, cream of the crop, best golfers can still absolutely be challenged even with the equipment where the equipment is right now.
Yeah.
The sport has not become too easy for anyone,
right?
Even at the highest level, right. And I thought that was perfect evidence of that.
Perfect evidence. I even love that one clip that was trending where the guy was like, if you started on the green as like a 10 handicap at Augusta, you might not win.
Right.
It's hard.
And it just shows there are ways, if you want to challenge the highest echelon of golfers, there are ways to do that.
Sure.
There are ways to do that with course design. There are ways to do that with how
US Open
fast and
courses.
firm
Yeah.
you get them going.
Right.
There are ways to do that. You know, there are ways to even do that with scheduling and where they hold events with harder conditioned weather-wise or whatever it may be.
Right.
And then I think there's also a time and a place to hold events at golf courses that are easier and that these guys can go 20, 30 under and we could just watch them just be a birdie festival. That's entertaining in a way too.
If the MLB came out today and said, tomorrow night we're doing a corked bat night, everyone's allowed to use corked bats, I would watch it. I mean, that's awesome. I'm going to see 4,000 home runs. It's going to be great. But here's the key. You still got to hit the home run.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then that would be in a lot of ways very novel.
Right, of course.
I get it. No different than saying like, here, give all the guys long drivers and see what they do.
Right.
But what I'm saying is it's more so like using that MLB reference. It's not like there's 14 home runs per game.
Exactly.
And we've got to make the ball not go as far.
Right.
The Masters was evidence of that. Those guys struggled playing with today's ball. Their ball is not yet rolled back. And it just makes me wonder, like, how much even more difficult might it have been if we took 15, 20 yards away from them?
Yeah.
Right? And would that, if you envisioned and replayed the Masters in your mind, would you be that much more entertained if the guys had to work that much harder because they were hitting the ball 15 yards less? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We saw plenty of struggle out there. Plenty. And I think it was clear evidence, and I'll get off my soapbox after this, but I think it was clear evidence that the rollback was a solution looking for a problem, and the problem is just not as prevalent there. There was a million other ways that they could have, if they really wanted to have less guys going low, there's ways that you can do it. That you don't require punishing all of golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Us included.
Right.
The last people who need to lose distance is us.
Yeah,
and
true.
I don't care. You want to make the argument it's just 5 yards? Anything is too much to take away from the everyday golfer. Anything.
I agree with that.
Anything. So anyway, that's all we have. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. But no doubt there's a problem here, and every week that goes by without some sort of clarity about how this game can reverse the fragmentation that's happened, I think is important, and I think it only gets more important when we got to stop the bleeding and not continue to lose viewership. Yeah. That's the key. I think you're hearing from players, you're hearing from fans. You guys let us know your take in the comments. We'll see you in the next video.